Being a Christian woman and walking in God's calling for our lives can be a difficult task. With the world and pop culture telling us to be one way, and the Bible saying another, you kind of end up feeling like an other. Well, you're not alone. Join me now and my friends as we navigate life in our 20s and 30s, while making sure we live out our faith, embrace our femininity, and looking cute. We discuss pop culture, life, careers, relationships, and so much more. Prepare to be entertained and educated. I know you're going to love it. Join our movement and embrace being another girl. The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not reflect our employers. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory.
And I'm Savannah.
And this is a pop culture podcast that's not like other pop culture podcasts. I'm still trying to figure out a new slogan. But before we were changing culture and bringing back traditional values. I'm really excited for this episode. Welcome to our second TCAP of the year. We have some very interesting stories to talk about. Honestly, the things that's on everyone's mind right now is kind of what we'll be discussing. But if you're new to this podcast and you're like, oh, what is this? This is a pop culture podcast. Like, we're talking about all the things. We have very insightful opinions and we're funny. That's just like another great thing about us. But we are going to bring kind of like a Christian flair to it. So our opinion on something might be a little different than what you're used to. But don't leave. Go ahead and give us the 5 stars and keep listening. So, it's called Mallory and Friends because I have my friends come on and we talk about different topics. We do interviews and we do these TCAPs. My friend Savannah is on, and this is her first time this year because it's the second episode of the year. Savannah, has anything new happened since you were last on?
You know, I don't know, Mallory. It's been kind of a chill year, 2023. Not really much happened for me. Kind of just living my life. No, just kidding. I got married. Well, I started dating. I got married, or I got engaged. I got married, and I got pregnant in 2023. So 2023 was definitely a year for the bugs. I mean, if people are always talking about like, oh, looking back at this time of my life last year, like so much has changed, and like that couldn't be more true for me this year. But it's all good. It's all so wonderful. I can just say, like, people are like, how is it being married? Because I'm one of the first friends to get married. So my best friend, actually, she got married at the beginning of this year. But no one else in my friend group really is married, which is something that I didn't really think about. Like, I don't know. A lot of people are dating. A couple people are engaged, but I'm the first one to be married. And so they've asked, like, how is it being married? And it's honestly so amazing. It's so different. It's so different than dating. It's so different than being engaged. And obviously, like in the Catholic Church, marriage is a sacrament. So that means you get like an abundance of graces being married. And that, I was asking my husband, I was like, is it just me, or is it just so different being married? I just feel like we love each other so much more. Like, it's true. Like, we're devoted to each other for the rest of our life. And he was like, no, you're totally right. He was like, and it's because of the grace that we got, and the fact that like, this is something that bonds you to another person for life. And neither of us have ever, had that. Neither of us have ever had that. So being married is wonderful. Being pregnant is very difficult, much more difficult than I thought it would be. I think it depends on the person. But my mom had like pretty like amazing pregnancies, but she was also like incredibly healthy. Like I try to do all the natural stuff. I try to be healthy. But she was like healthy to the max. She exercised a ton, and I'm not great at that. Like I'm not great at doing that regularly. And so this pregnancy has definitely been difficult in regards to like sickness, just like feeling gross, but it's also amazing. Like it's amazing that every day it's not just me doing my things, it's me and another person. Like there's another person that is absolutely dependent on me, not just for the first 9 months, but for the first couple years of their life. So that's a little update on my life.
So when did you meet your husband?
In February of last year.
Okay, wow.
So like it's just crazy because You know, we met and we knew pretty soon we were going to get married. We knew, I think both of us have talked about it and come to the consensus that both of us knew pretty much within the first month that we were going to get married to each other.
Oh, wow.
Which for some people, they would say, that's not a good decision. You know, you need to take more time. And we did take more time. Like, we didn't get engaged till we were dating for like 7 months, right? Because, you know, and Mallory's still like, oh my gosh, that's so soon. But I seriously think that, you know, our world likes to complicate marriage. It likes to complicate a lot of things, but it likes to complicate marriage in particular because our society is not focused on families. You know, they're trying to really, as much as possible, dissuade people from getting married because, you know, it's a culture of death. It's a culture that doesn't like children. And so why would they want you to get married if they don't want children? You know, they know that that's pretty much a natural outcome of marriage. And so I think that there's a lot of things in our society that are kind of overcomplicated. And, you know, marriage is the devotion of two people to each other for life. And this devotion is to lead each other to heaven, right? And if you have two people that are and it's rare for you to find this so quick, but if you have two people that are just completely open and honest with each other, love each other so much and have the same goals in life, then why wait? So that's just kind of my perspective. So we started dating in February, at the end of February, beginning of March. Well, you know, actually, okay, I think I met him in January, but we started dating at the end of February, beginning of March. And then we dated throughout the spring, throughout the summer, and then into the fall. And then we got engaged in fall, and we got married in December, which was beautiful. I loved having a Christmas wedding. It was so stressful planning a Christmas wedding because it was around the holidays and everything was going on. But like in retrospect, it was so beautiful because it's like everyone's just in such a festive spirit already that your wedding is just even more beautiful. So
yeah. Oh, well, my parents had a December wedding too. Theirs is December 12th. And my mom said she wouldn't change it for a thing. She loved having a Christmas wedding. Also,
I've heard like the two opinions. I've heard people say like there's like 2 months of the year that people are like, don't get married. Like, I don't remember what the other one is. Maybe July, maybe like the middle of the summer. But they're like December, like it's overwhelming. Like it's during the holidays. But I don't know. My life is not stress-free and I like doing things like big, you know, and like, I don't know, crazy. But I think it was a great choice for us. But, you know, for someone who's already stressed about your wedding, like maybe don't do it in December.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you looked absolutely beautiful. It looked like it was a fun time. And I want to comment on what you said about the getting engaged within 7 months. I have a friend who, she might be listening. Shout out to Kiara. I have a friend who met, because we all met in a Bible study together, got engaged, and got married to someone within 6 months. So, and they're still together. Yeah. She just had her third baby. They're still together. I think that I agree with what you said. Like, if it's for sure, like, you know for a fact, why wait? I do think sometimes, like, I don't know, if you're a Christian, I definitely don't see the point of, like, wait, if you know for a fact. I don't see the point of dating. There are times where I'm kind of like, practically speaking, I don't know if I think I could get married within the year. I think you guys did fine. Like the February to December, I think that's fine. The 6 months is that's a little fast because I think I'd just be a little nervous. Yeah. Especially like, you know, you got to do premarital eventually. Yes. So like, you know, within the 6 months, when do you start your premarital? Yeah. But you know,
so there's a thing that I will say to that because I also like have a very strong opinion, and you know sometimes it's a little bit confusing when I'm talking about it, but so I also am like super against getting married just because you want to be married. And I know many people who unfortunately that happens to, so many Christians and Catholics particularly, because there's you know little cultures inside of like, you know, communities. And I think that inside of the Catholic, especially like more traditional Catholic or traditional Christian communities, is, you know, get married either right out of college or right out of high school, even, you know, get married like right away for young women in particular. And there's that pressure. to get married before you do anything with your life. You know what I mean? Like I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I've seen that with a lot of people. And unfortunately, what that leads to is that the first person that ever really shows interest in you, or that you ever show interest in, you get married to. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that the saying that, like, you know, a Catholic who marries a Catholic is going to have a good marriage, or a Christian who marries a Christian is going to have a good marriage. I don't think it works like that. I think there's a lot more to it. You know, I think that there's like physical chemistry matters a lot. Interest, like shared interests matter a lot. Shared beliefs obviously matter a lot. And so I think that this, like, there's got to be a balance, because where I was in life and where Cam was in life was we were both, like, I can say this honestly, and none of even my close friends would disagree with me. We were both very happily single. Like, we were both very, very happily single and could have stayed that way for a couple years, you know? And that was very important, because we both were like, you know, we were finding fulfillment from other things in our lives. We loved our jobs. We had very like fast-paced social lives. And when we talked about it, because I was like, it's interesting because, you know, I was happy before I met you, you know? And he said the same thing. Like, I was happy before, like, it's not like you made me happy. It's that we fulfilled each other, you know? We fulfilled each other and we made each other's lives better. So I think, like, advice to anyone who's like, oh my gosh, like, that's so cool. Like, I want to get married in like a short time span, you know, like, I want to be married now. Like, that should not be the goal. It should not be the goal to be married in a short time span. It should be the goal to be content with yourself and be content with God, and then find a husband, you know, or find a wife. Like, it should not be the goal to like just get married. My goal was never to like just get married. Obviously, I wanted to have a family, but I wanted to do it within God's timing, and God's timing for me just happened to be very short. So that's, I think that's kind of like a better, like, long way of saying it. Like, I don't advocate, I don't say like the minute you get in a relationship with someone, you should get married. We were also, both of us had great jobs and we were like financially stable. Like, there were a lot of things that just kind of worked perfectly, and we just met at the perfect time in order to do that. If we had met 2 years ago, I don't think we would have gotten married in such a short time frame. You know what I mean?
Okay, sorry. I think it cut out for a teensy second, but
Okay.
from what I heard, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
And I want to say also too, you're right about, especially like down here in the South, and just in the Southern Christian community, I'm the only person, except for one, I have one friend group where we're all single. Out of that friend group, everyone else I know is married, and a lot of people have kids. So like, there is this pressure to just meet someone, like, hurry up and meet someone, and who you marry is, aside from accepting Jesus as your savior, is the most important decision that you'll ever make. So you should not take it lightly. I think that because of like all the pressures and stuff, people do. I think you're right on that. People take it, well, I just gotta marry whoever, and it's like, that's not important. I'm sorry, it is too important to do that. It's too important.
Exactly.
This is also the father of, for girls, the father of your children, and you don't want a bum. You don't want someone
not
mean.
at all.
Yeah, like, it's so like, this is a big decision, and I agree. Like, we cannot, you can't just make it willy-nilly just because you really want to be married. And the other thing I want to say, you said, about contentment. I do think that's really important, and I know people hate to hear that. I know I used to hate to hear that too, but I wasn't content. That's why I hated it. Like, now I feel very content. Like, it is what it is kind of where I'm at. Like, I know what God has called me to do. I'm just focusing on that. And if someone comes along, they come along. If they don't, then I still know I'm giving God glory, blah, blah, blah. So my point, though, is like, it's really important to get to a place like that. I don't want to say that, because when you get there, that's when you'll meet someone, because that's not true. I know people who are desperate.
No, because I was there for like 2 years, you know, like, it wasn't that I got there, and then it's like you meet someone immediately. No, like, God has called you to do certain things while you're single. Like, being single is a vocation in and of itself, and I fully believe that. And I fully believe that if I had been in a relationship when I was 18, I would not have been able to accomplish the things that I think that God called me to accomplish. So I admire I admire people so much who are single and content because it's so hard and it's so rare. And I would say it's harder than getting married. I mean, I don't know that it's harder than being married for 10 years, right? Because I haven't. But it is harder because we're, as humans, we naturally want that love and we want that affection. And it is a sacrifice to just like do what God is calling you to do and be alone in doing it. And that's like one of the most beautiful things ever.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Like, because I think people think, oh yeah, I'll be content, and then next week God will send that man. No, that could happen, but that might not be it. So you shouldn't be content so that you can meet someone. You should be content because that is what God has called you to do. And at the end of the day, like, we're not in charge. Like, God's timing is perfect. If we can make the decisions ourselves, I'm sure 95% of us talking right now that are or 5% of us listening would be married if we can make the decision ourselves. But God's timing is so much better, and that's what's more important. That's what the most important thing. And one last thing I want to say about that too is I think it's so important to be busy, and I don't mean in like the be a busybody. Like, I mean like be busy and like doing things, being. And that's one thing, like, this past year for myself, I have moved more into contentness. Now, obviously, I have some days where I'm like, dang, this battle, this struggle will be nice to go through with somebody. But for the most part, I'll say 99.9% of the time, I am pretty content. And what has helped is, like, I have kept myself busy with good friendships. Like, even my friends that are married and have kids, I do try to keep up with them. Like, I try to still be in their life, like having good friendships. And then another thing is like having something that you're interested in. For example, this podcast. This isn't my full-time job right now. So this isn't like I wouldn't say it's a hobby because I take it very seriously, but for lack of a better word, it's more of a hobby. It keeps me I have to do research. Like the topics we're talking about today, I had to look them up. And I feel as if this is a calling in the sense of having this conversation. Like, it's giving me life. Like, you have to be involved in things like that. You can't just sit at home upset that you're single, scrolling, looking at everybody else's relationships. Like, I was talking to a friend about this. She was, we were being very candid and I was being very honest with her. I said, so she used to send me, almost every day, just different relationship stuff and like different prayers and things like that. And I was like, personally, like, I had to unfollow, like, sometimes I had to unfollow like really big mom accounts or like really big marriage accounts. I love the LeBrants. I can't follow them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just can, sometimes you can't. I had to unfollow because it just wasn't making me feel good about myself. So like, even if and she was like, well, it's kind of encouraging. I'm like, if you finish scrolling or if you get off someone's page and you start crying, is it really encouraging you? Like, that's where I was. Like, I was at a place about 2-3 years ago where like I would look at different people and there were some Christians who and they weren't doing this intentionally. Like, it's just where I was. They would post about their life and all these things, and like I would leave just so sad, like, oh, I want this so bad, and I'm just so sad,
Yeah.
So then it's no longer helpful for you. So you got to get off of that stuff. You really have to find something that, like, figure out what God has called you to do and just do that. Like, that's what you should be focusing on. That's where you should put all your attention on.
Oh, for sure.
And then when the person comes along, like Sav and Cam, when the person comes along, you already have your foundation, you already have other things. So you don't want your whole world to be your spouse. That to me is that's another conversation.
And that's an interesting thing to navigate. And I mean, I could talk about this for forever. That's an interesting thing to navigate because when we first met, I was so busy. I was traveling every week. Like, I was seriously traveling every week. And I was, for the first 5 months that we were dating. So like for a lot of our relationship, I was incredibly busy and I was just, I would get so emotional. I would just like cry. I'd be like, I don't want to do this. But it's important to see how he reacts. If he says, oh, just quit everything, stay home with me. Like, I don't think that's healthy. I honestly don't think that's healthy because I think that can lead to an isolation of you, your friends, what's important to you, your work, everything, right?
Idolizing, making that person your idol, making that person your God. I have seen that in relationships. I've seen women quit everything, stop being friends,
Mm-hmm.
and their boyfriend is their God.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't
Yeah.
be there either. That's not a good spot to be.
And so he, every time I would say, because I'm fine admitting, I would get it in my head that like, oh, I'm not going to this. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can't be away from him for this long, because it'd be like week-long trips. And he would, every time, he'd drive me to the airport and he'd be like, no, this is what you love to do. Like, this is what you're going to do. Like, I'm always going to be here. Like, like we want to get married to each other, but we need to both have individual goals as well.
Yes.
And so that's been something that's been really hard for me, but I think it's really important, because if like the healthiest relationships that I see are when both the woman and the man are very, very motivated, not necessarily in the same thing. Like, obviously you're going to have the same like big goals in life, but when you have your own hobbies, you have your own friends, you have that, because God meant for us to be in community, and that's whether or not you're in a marriage, that's whether or not you're married. And when you start dating and get married and just isolate yourself, that's when people become unhappy, because you're not meant to solely fulfill each other.
Yeah. Well, that's the relationship advice segment. Come back for more relationship advice from Mal and Sav. No, but I'm so happy for you. You seem so happy. You're glowing. I'm really happy for you. And I know that
Thank you, Mal.
wanted to be married and have kids. And like,
Right.
I love that. I love when my friends, I know they wanted to be married and they have kids, and that's just how it happens. That's so beautiful.
And it's not like, the thing is too, I had a hard time admitting, sorry, I could talk about this for forever. This is the last
No,
thing
you're
I'll say.
good.
I had a hard time admitting when I was single that I wanted to be married and have kids, because I was so like, my life is great. Like, I don't know. I think about that a lot. A lot of people just like go through their day. I've found that it's great to be like intentional and think about like particular things in your life that you love. Like, throughout my whole life, I've thought that. And so I'd always be like, man, like my life is really great. And I'd have a hard time admitting to people that, oh, but someday I want to be married and have kids. Like, it's just like any other goal in life, right? It's not shameful to admit that,
Right.
but then also, admit that it might take 10 years. Like, it's a natural human desire. Most women, I would say, probably want to be married and have kids. That doesn't mean that you can't be completely fulfilled where you are in life. So that's something that I'm just very passionate about. But anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, it is okay to want to be married. I want to be married. Like I said, I'm content where I am, but I do desire to be married and have children. Like, that is something that, I've wanted my entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it should be okay to admit that. Because also I think when you don't admit that you want that, then you're also kind of like, that's the other side of the unhealthiness of it. Because acting like you don't want it, then I don't know. And there were times, like, I was like you too. There were times, especially this past year, where I was like, I don't know if I want it, but like, no, I want it. Oh, not even I don't know if I want it, but like, I was acting like I didn't want it, but like, I want it, obviously. But it's okay it's nothing wrong with wanting it. You just don't want to be on the unhealthy side of like making it an idol. That's another thing too, especially us Christian women. Like, sometimes we make marriage an idol. Most times we make marriage an idol, I'd argue. Yeah.
Yeah. And one last quote that I thought of that I was going to share last time that you were talking, that I heard from one of my favorite authors, Karen Kingsbury. It's just the quote, run towards God and then look back and see who's running behind you. Ooh. And I love that, because it encompasses so many things. It's saying run towards God, right? With your life, honor God. But don't just do that. Don't just do that, because then you're never going to see when someone comes into your life, right? Keep an eye out. Like, look and see who's following you. Look who's seeing, not necessarily who's following you, but who's following God as well, And so I just love that quote. Run towards God and then look back and see who's following behind you.
Love that. Well, we have a lot of stories to get into.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to catch up, and I'm glad. I honestly think that, like, a lot of things you said are super important, especially for the young girls who, desire to be married or like they're dating someone. I really think what you said was like, because you know, people look up to married couples. And even though, you know, I do hate when, you know, a couple's been married for 5 minutes. Here is our new YouTube channel. Come join us. But I do think there's something to say, like what you were saying about dating. I do think new married couples have a lot to say about dating, because you have to get to the marriage spot. You have to start dating. Anyway, now I'm like saying more about the topic. Okay,
we could spend a whole podcast talking about this. Maybe a different time.
No, literally. So let us start. Oh, first I have a couple morning announcements. If you're going to the March for Life, January 19th, don't go by yourself. Join us. We are packing Embrace Grace boxes on February 3rd. If you live in the Charlotte area, we're going to be meeting at the U City Women's Center. I was about to call it shelter, but it's a center. And we're going to pack Embrace Grace boxes. And these are like boxes that we're going to give to the center. And they're just like encouraging boxes for moms who have chosen life. Last thing, you should join a Patreon, $5 a month. This month, we are doing a $50 giveaway to Culture of Life. This top, I don't think it's available anymore, but this top is from Culture of Life. Technically it's a dress, but I like to wear it as a top with like leggings or tuck it in. I have this like really flary pants. Anyway, this is from Culture of Life 1972. We're doing a $50 giveaway. And so here are some of the things you get for the Patreon. When we have guests, they will have a Patreon question. So we'll ask a question and you guys can I'll tell you who the guests are and you guys can tell me the question to ask them. Or I'll come up with a question. Well, ask a question that'll only be Patreon exclusive. You'll also get early access to special events, and then you're gonna get at least one new episode a month. This month, I'm explaining, like, getting into great detail about, like, why I'm pro-life, because this is Life Month on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about, like, why I'm pro-life and, like, the journey I got to, like, where I am today. I've talked about it before on other podcasts. I'm sure I've talked about it on this podcast, but, like, I feel like I've never, been this, like I was very open. Like, I've already recorded it. I shared some stuff that I hadn't shared before. So if you are nosy and want to know, that is joining the Patreon for $5 a month. Okay. That's that. So let's get to our main stories. So first thing, everybody's talking about ins and outs. I mean, it's all over TikTok. I've listened to a bunch of podcasts. So I was like, you know what? We should do ins and outs. Like, what do we predict is going to be in this year? What do we think is out this year? So we each have 3 ins and 3 outs. And then you guys let us know what you think is an in and an out for this year in the comments. And maybe I'll make that be the Spotify question. So, Savannah, do you want to go? What's one thing you think will be in this year?
Yeah, I love this trend, actually, because I don't know. It seems more simple to me than like whole New Year's resolutions. It's like, this is something that like is gonna be like people are gonna like, you know, I don't know. But yeah. I think like I wrote down like basically like homemaking, like sourdough bread, like all that stuff that's kind of been like on the horizon of like people like, you know, kind of like a fad almost like coming back in. All this like off the grid stuff, not necessarily living off the grid, but like more homesteading stuff, but like in an apartment setting or like in a city house setting. I think that's gonna be way more in this year.
That's interesting. You know, if you know me personally, I could never live in the country. I think chickens are gross. I need to be close to other people. But I've never thought about the homesteading in a city or an apartment. I'm gonna have to look into that. That's never crossed my mind. But I have wished that I could do I could like grow vegetables, stuff like that, like in a place that wasn't the country. I've thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can in a
I
city.
think that I know Alex Clark talked about it a while back, but I've seen a lot on like TikTok and stuff just of like young women and men who are like kind of just like sick of the like, you know, hustle culture, fast food all the time. And they're like, hey, wait, like we can learn how to do all this stuff as young people, like in our place, you know, in our dorm, in our apartment. Like, it's not like you need this whole 7 acres to do it. We can learn to do that where we are in life. So.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. That doesn't come on my algorithm on TikTok, but maybe like
it's probably also just because depending on people's algorithms. But I've seen a lot of like and we'll see. These are all predictions, right? But I've seen a lot of like people like trying certain things, like trying to make yogurt, trying to make sourdough. And it's all doable, in like anywhere, like literally anywhere. So we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. So kind of sort of adding to what you said, I wrote down pink and then in parentheses,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
wrote elegance and softness. So what I mean is
Yes.
just like I
Yes.
think this year, so like last year was really like Barbie pink, and I think a lot of girls,
Mhm.
and I've seen on TikTok, a lot of girls like, oh, I didn't really like pink growing up because I felt like I couldn't because I wanted to be like the boys. Personally, I've never experienced that, but I'm sure
Mhm.
that is something that people have gone through, and I think now people are a lot of girls want to be more like pink and soft and like
Mhm.
elegant. And I mean, Jessica K and Selkie are becoming way more mainstream.
Mm.
These type of things. So I think this is gonna be like specifically for girls, it's gonna be more of a pink elegance year, like a soft pink type of thing. That's what I'm predicting.
I love it. I love it. Um, Wait, I think that this also could just be because of my algorithm, but I think that like mocktails are in, and alcohol is kind of totally, and I think this has been going on for a while, but I think that alcohol is just like at this point so out, like it, and not just alcohol, but like going out to like raunchy places. Like it's so like classiness in general is just so much more in.
So one of my outs is excessive drinking. I
Yeah.
really think that like so I guess I'll talk about that for a second. I really think that excessive drinking is out. Like I've been to and I agree kind of like what you're like raunchy places. For example, like I went to a bunch of like Christmas bars over
Mm-hmm.
the break. Over back in around Christmas time. And
Right.
all of them were so cute and Christmassy. It was just like a different vibe
Mm-hmm.
than like,
Mm-hmm.
other places I've been to like when I was in college. It was just so
Right.
cute and classy and like there was like all these like different lights and like the music was fun and like you could kind of move
Mm-hmm.
around a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like I don't know, like in college you go places and it was just like it's a different type of like pressure,
Yeah.
I guess you could say, like
Yeah.
and it was packed. I mean, it was like one of the nights my friends and I waited for like 45 minutes to get in.
Wow.
It was packed, but it's so cute and like it was just great. And I think I agree, like excessive drinking is out. Like there's a lot of places now that have like non-alcoholic beer if you're
Oh
into
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
Or you can get like non-alcoholic drinks. Like it's becoming more popular. And I've even seen a lot of recipes on TikTok and Reels. I've also seen there's like non-alcoholic bars now. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you just want to go to like a fun bar that doesn't sell alcohol, I've been seeing that. So I think I agree. Like I think this year, all that stuff is out, and just like mocktails and music that are in.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. And then last one, I have like a lot. And okay, this one I don't really know, and I don't know if I'm going to explain it well, but I think that like okay, so like travel, but not necessarily just traveling kind of like inexpensively and regardless of your state in life. I think that like for years it's been this sort of like, oh, like how are all these people traveling so much? Like, how are all these young people traveling so much? It's been kind of like looked down upon, especially by like the older generation. I think now, I don't know. I think now it's going to be a little bit more like you can travel regardless of your state in life. Like, you just got to kind of keep it simple. I see that coming. I don't know about you.
Yeah, like it's not just a luxury anymore.
Exactly. It's not
attainable.
just, and yeah. Exactly.
Okay. One of my ends, I have being hydrated. Now, part of that is because of the Stanley craze. I really think this year
Mm-hmm.
everyone is going to be carried. Like before, the stereotype, oh girl, emotional water bottle, support water bottle, whatever. I think that's like really a thing now. Like I think that this
Yes,
year
I agree.
everyone is really going to be hydrated, which is good. And it's going to help your hair, your skin, your nails,
Yeah.
your weight. It's good for you to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
And then my other
No,
end,
it's good. Yeah, I like that one.
is Bose. I don't wear bows.
Oh yeah, we all know that.
But I've seen so many people wear bows,
so
and it
much.
looks so cute. So I really think bows are really going to be
love it.
Maybe I might one day, but like I've seen it, and it looks really like on most people I see them on is so cute.
I love that one.
Okay, and what are your outs?
Okay, so one of my outs is I just think skimpy clothing in general is kind of out. I think that people are like, how, like, I don't know whose Instagram I was looking at, but it was, it's just like, it's like, how naked can you get? Like, we've gotten to a point in our society where it's like, you really can't get any more naked. So like,
yeah,
it's, I think that, like, not necessarily that we're going to go completely the opposite way where we're like all wearing bags, but I think that a little bit more modesty is going to be in this year.
Oh, that's a good one. I think so too. I think people are kind of over like club wear as like everyday wear.
Yeah.
I think people are really over that. So this one is I think might be a hot take. But let me know what you think. I have what's going to be out this year, even though it's an election year, is a hyperfixation on politics. I think a lot of people
I think I agree with you.
A lot of people the last couple of years have like made politics almost like I think my brother was telling me about a book he read where people have the author described it as like politics have become like a sport. So like we're so team. So the football
for sure.
Yeah. And the football team in North Carolina is Panthers. So it's like I'm Panthers. Nothing. The Panthers lose game. I think they're like 0-15. So like, but my family, no matter what, we're Panthers fans. So people have turned that, like, have left sports and turned to politics. And I think people are getting tired of that. And even though it's an election year, I think we're going to see a huge drop in like hyperfixation. I do think people are still going to vote. I do think people still are going to want to consume political content, but I don't think they're going to be fixated on it like they were before. And I think a lot of people, like I have some friends, actually have a good chunk of my friends here in Charlotte are like over the whole thing. Like they just don't even want to talk about politics. And I wouldn't say they were super into it before, but it's definitely like to a different level now. And I really think that like we're going to move from like this hyperfixation in politics. I don't know what to, probably just to like, I don't know, healthy living. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Because I mean, I like politics, and I do think do think of it kind of as like my sport, in quotes. But I think that it's just like it's been stupid from the beginning to say that like one party is always great. And I think that people are realizing that, So I would agree with you. I think it's still important. Like it's still incredibly important. But I do think the hyperfixation is, And one thing that goes with that I had that definitely goes with that as an out is like mass media, right? Like trusting Fox, trusting like all those. I it's already out. Like it's already out, but I think it's just even more out, and people are just going to continue to have these commentators that they really like, and that's who they trust. I just think that like people do not have any trust for mass media on either side. It's not just liberal media, it's conservative media as well. I don't think that people have trust for them.
Yeah, no, for real. And I think people are just gonna, which is a good thing, and I think it can sometimes be a bad thing in the sense of like,
I don't exactly. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, because it's like also you're like trusting these random people, but
I think I'm kind of there too. I haven't watched like mainstream media in a long time. I will say I do watch World News and Inside Edition. That's just me, being an old person. But like I don't watch anything else really that's like mainstream, because it's kind of, I'd rather watch my commentators, which I do admit, like I do. So this past year I did try to add a variety. So sometimes I'll watch what's that man's name? He's could not be further from the right, but I'll watch just to hear his perspective on something.
Oh, send me that, because I've been looking for actually like the other side to like follow, because in regards to political commentators, I just don't really know where to start. So send me whoever you have.
Okay, I will.
I think it's always good to have both sides in anything. So
yeah,
and with political commentators, it's like they're very niche. Like they tend to be very niche and very focused on, you know, one candidate or one particular agenda. So
yeah. So I had to balance it out because I was like starting to say stuff and act a certain way. I was like, wait a second, this isn't. There's because love. I won't say anybody's name, but there are certain people like love them, and I'm sure they have good intentions, but everybody has an agenda. No matter how great a political commentator is, they have an agenda, and they might not share things. It's just a myriad of things. So. Yeah. And then my other out is I think like Botox, lip fillers, boob jobs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like that started last year. I think this year we're going to see a huge influx of people, especially getting their breast implants out. I remember seeing like big celebrities last year, and I think we're going to see even more of them get their implants out. I think Botox and lip filler, especially because I think the world is trying to be a little bit healthier in general. They're realizing like that all that stuff is just not good for you. So people are going to be dissolving it. I really think that stuff is going to be out this year.
Yeah. No, I so agree with you. Yeah. And my last out was kind of wait, I have to think of how to say this because it's an out. So my out would be underdressing. Like sweatsuits all the time.
Yeah,
I think
good. I
the
hope that's out.
Well, I think sweatsuits were really, really in like 2 years ago, like the matching sweatsuits and like all that stuff. And I mean, I'm not a great example. I'm wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants right now, but I think that for the majority, you know, more of an not necessarily elegance, but more of like European style dressing. You know, I keep seeing all these like images like going viral of like the 19 somethings, like how they dressed in the streets of New York compared to today, where it's like all these people in bras basically. I think that that's gonna start, at least, you know, we're gonna start seeing less of the just kind of like just always casual dressing, you know.
I hope so. I have never been.
You're a good example of the dressing nice. I feel like you normally, like, even when we're doing this podcast, like you're wearing like an outfit. Like that's something that I aspire to, and I think it's because I kind of got on the trend of like sweatsuits, you know, like
Yeah.
like 2 years, and it was like COVID, and then a little bit after COVID. My mom's also a great example of that. She always was like, you don't leave the house if you look like you're in your pajamas. Like, your pajamas are for the house, you know? Like, why are we wearing pajamas out on the street? Like, so.
Yeah, no, and I will say that's how I was raised. Like, even I remember one time in high school we had a pajama day. My mom would not let me wear pajamas, so I had to wear like sweatpants. And everybody else was in like these cool pajamas, and I was like in my sweatpants because she was like, "You don't leave the house." She was like, "I don't care."
That is funny.
If that's what everybody's doing, you don't, and that's how I am. I mean, there's been like 1 or 2 times, like if it's a lazy Sunday. I have a friend that lives like 5 minutes away. It's a lazy Saturday or something. I might go to her house in sweatpants if it's just gonna be us. But like if she's like, "Oh, we're gonna have other people over," even if I'm not even feeling it, I'll throw on some jeans. I'll throw on something just because, like, I really do think Well, I also like dressing up, and I do think when you dress up, it kind of like your outfit shifts a little bit, like people's perception of you, but also your perception of you.
Oh, 100%.
I fully believe that. And I know I've said this before, and people are like, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, no, like, this is the truth. Like, when you are wearing, I'll know for myself, when I'm wearing something, like, when I go out, and I'm wearing something that's, like, a little bit lower cut than I normally wear, or, like, you know, that's kind of the only thing. Like, I don't wear short skirts because I just don't look good in them. Anyway, my point is, like, when I'm dressing going out, I notice like my attitude changes a little.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I think that's just like a human instinct. So I think it's really,
it totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally is. Just try, and I feel like I do this all the time, and I always like am perceptive to like what happens, but like just try going into a gas station on a road trip when you're like wearing a sweatsuit or wearing pajamas and look all put together, and then try going into a gas station after an event when you're in a nice dress, you have your makeup, your hair done, you're treated completely differently. You're treated
100%.
completely differently. People look you in the eye. People, say
Open the
hi to
door.
you. People open the door to you. It's just a completely different story. They don't, people act like you don't exist when you're just dressed like a, I don't even know, homeless person, but.
Yeah. So those are ins and outs. Let us know, you guys, like, if you agree, if your ins and outs are similar, what did we miss? What's something that, or if you're like, oh no, people love Botox, there's probably another 6 years of that, let us know. Okay, so we are already 40 minutes in and we have like 3 more stories. So let's kind of like zoom, but not really zoom through these.
Sounds good.
The next thing, so the next 2 stories for sure, something that like everyone's talking about. The first one is the Epstein not client list. It is the court documents. So
Right.
really, what I wanted to say about this was like I'll link some articles or like people who are doing really good coverage of it. There's not really much I can say that's going to be different because I haven't looked at all 943 pages. But there are people who have, so I think it'll be good to hear their input. But I did want to kind of talk about some of the notable names. Also, I want to say, like, because I was talking to my friend about this, an important distinction is like this isn't the client list. This is just the names from the court document this is court document transcripts. So there's people who, you see some of the, that's why like you have to kind of do your own research. You see some of the lists and they'll be like, these are people named. So then we're thinking it's the client. I thought it was a client list. So I'm like looking at these.
I did too, actually. Yeah.
No, it's just court documents. So in the court documents, they might bring up, for example, they brought up Kate Blanchett and Leonardo DiCaprio. So if you look at all those people talking about it, they're in there. Well, the court asks the Jane Doe about them, and she's like, oh, he would say their names, but I've never saw them on the island. Like, I never saw them. So like they're technically not, like, we don't have any proof that they did anything because the girl on the island didn't see them.
So confusing, yeah.
But when we're looking at the list, we're seeing all these names. So I do think that's an important distinction.
That's very important because it just shows fake news, Some people probably are, some people are just resharing this, but some people don't know. Like, I didn't know. The whole thing is just kind of over my head, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, and even Trump was on the list, but they asked if Trump was on the island. She asked, I think he's mentioned twice.
Yeah.
And they asked if Trump was on the island, and she said no. So it's like
I did hear that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's just something also, too, to keep in mind that, like, just because someone's name was in the transcripts doesn't mean that they even knew what was going on. Now, one of the names that, I'll tell you the name that shocked me was Naomi Campbell. She was the first Black supermodel. Beautiful woman. She does look like she's not a nice lady, I will say that. She looks like she's always angry and mean. I don't know her, I'm just telling you by her look. She was mentioned 21 times. Now, I haven't seen all of the times she was mentioned, but it's also kind of like, okay, she wasn't mentioned 21 times, she went there 21 times. And it's like, okay, if you go once with your family, I can see you. Oh, I had no idea. Like, Robert Kennedy Jr., he said that his family, like him, his wife, and his kids, took his private plane, Epstein's plane, before. I can see him being like, oh, I had no idea. That's possible. Right. But if you are visiting this man's island 21 times, I don't know. Like, that's kind of sus. And then another person, which was crazy, did not expect this, Stephen Hawking. For those that do not know, Stephen Hawking he was the smartest man in the world, an atheist who hated God, so yikes on that. Unless he, made some life changes before he passed away. He was mentioned. Now, I might laugh at what I'm about to read because I'm uncomfortable, but it's not funny. It's not funny. Oh, Mal. But I might giggle. So just a heads up. In the court documents, the question was, did Jeffrey ever talk to you about Stephen Hawking's proclivities? The answer, yes. He liked watching undressed midgets solve complex equations on a high-top chalkboard. It's not funny, but I will admit, the first time I read that, I said, this can't be real. I looked, and that is in the documents. He would watch on the island.
It just sounds like
solve equations.
It just all sounds like it all sounds like it can be real.
It sounds like a movie.
It literally sounds like like a movie.
Yeah.
Like a fan fiction movie. I don't know.
And another thing about Stephen Hawking, just a side note, he cheated on his wife with his nurse, which is crazy, but
Yeah.
The other two, last thing I want to say, the other two people who have mentioned the most are Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew, which we all kind of knew.
Yeah.
We were expecting that. So these documents are out. I'll leave articles and people who are going over it for a more in-depth explanation of it. And I think once again I just want to remind everybody, just because they're mentioned, it's just the court document.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. It's hard, yeah. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like whenever something like this happens, you have to do so much digging to know the actual truth, because there's so many people putting things out about it. There's so many news networks, there's just so much. And that's another thing they say, people don't trust mass media, but it's like Mal has done the research herself, and found who she thinks is credible, and that's what you gotta do, so.
Yeah. And even with, last thing I'll say on this, I don't know if you saw at the beginning of the week, Aaron Rodgers said that Jimmy Kimmel was going to be on the list. Jimmy Kimmel, or even in the documents, Jimmy Kimmel wasn't even mentioned in the documents. And it's like, you can't just, so, I was expecting, I was like, oh, wow, first of all, I was like, how would Aaron Rodgers know? That was my first. But then I was like, maybe no. Why would you say? Because my next thing was like, but why would you say something so crazy? That's a huge accusation.
Right.
So why would you say that? So then I was like, oh, he's going to be on there. I looked and searched and tried to see, and I found some articles, multiple articles supporting he is not in the documents. So it's like, you have to do your own research before you start making decisions and opinions on this. Altogether.
Yeah.
These were the individuals that participated were depraved individuals, and may God have mercy on their souls. I hope they repented. If not,
it's sickening. I hope so too. Yeah.
If not. All right. So the next topic, something that everyone and their grandmother's been talking about. Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She is free from prison, and now she's everywhere. This is so the first.
That's true. She's literally everywhere. Everywhere I look, I see pictures of her, things about her. I'm like, wow, okay.
Literally, honestly, it's overexposure, and I'm going to explain in a second.
Yeah.
So the name on everybody's lips is going to be Gypsy Rose. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, 32, pled guilty to second-degree murder in 2016 after conspiring with her then-boyfriend, Nick Godjohn, to kill her mother, who allegedly suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Those with a condition who make children sick by creating fake symptoms. The case has been well documented in the media and both fictional retelling in several documentaries. So if you don't know the story, long story short, Gypsy's mother, for years, the majority of her life, pretended she was sick, had her in a wheelchair, doing all these things, taking money. There's documentaries about it everywhere. There's a Hulu show about it. It's, she did all this stuff. And then eventually Gypsy got some time, or she was able to get a computer. She met a guy, or I want to say it was Christian Mingle or something.
Yeah, it was some dating.
It was a Christian one.
It was a Christian one? I didn't know that. I didn't know
it was a Christian one.
Interesting.
They met, they conspired to kill her mother. They killed her mother, and then they got caught. She was in jail. He's in jail for life because he's the one who actually did it. And she got out, I believe, on good behavior. So everybody's talking about her. Actually, can I go first with my thoughts?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my thoughts. Oh, okay, she's out. You know what? Hopefully she gets the help that she needs. Everyone else on the internet's thoughts. Oh my goodness, let's Gypsy Rose. I saw there was a hashtag Tipsy for Gypsy. Oh, this is so great. Oh my God, I love this. She's gonna be an influencer. And it's like, wait a minute. She did murder her mother.
Yeah.
Which I do think there's mitigating factors. So I don't think she's this evil, cold-blooded woman. I definitely don't think that. But taking a life is still a big deal. So she definitely needs to get help. She's never really had a normal life. Does she have friends? Like, does she is married. She came out with a husband. She
Yeah,
came out
I
with a
know. I
husband.
saw that.
And she's oversharing about their sexual exploits, oversharing. And it's just it's weird to me that these people are like so into her. Like TikTok,
Yeah.
like it's before the so she got out I think the 30th, the 31st on TikTok. I had to get off because I'm like, okay, you guys are, this is too much. Like,
Yeah.
why are you guys doing all this? I think it's a little weird, and I love true crime. Like but I like ethical true crime. So like I am a true crime ethical content consumer. So it's not that I don't like true crime. It's just like this is a real person. But then
Right.
on the other hand, she is
Right.
she created an Instagram immediately. She created
Yeah.
a TikTok. She's commenting on things. So it's like she's almost exploiting herself. I don't know. It's just, it's
Yeah.
weird. I don't want to see it. I'm not really interested in following her unless something big happens. I just don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's just like telling of our society that we're like
True.
idolizing a murderer. Like, why are we like there's a difference between loving true crime, right? A bunch of different, crime stories, right? There's a difference between listening to podcasts about that and wanting someone who killed her mother to be an influencer. Like, what do we want these? What is an influencer? An influencer is supposed to influence the way you live your life, right? You're supposed to admire them for something. What do we admire Gypsy Rose for, right? What do we admire her for? Yes, she, had good behavior in jail, okay? Like, is that the lowest standard that we have?
Like,
I think it's so much over curiosity, over fascination with people who did heinous things, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Like, her childhood, I can't imagine how terrible that is, but that never justifies murdering someone. It's just, I didn't know much about her, and I started seeing all these people saying like Gypsy Rose's get out of jail day, right? It's like in a couple days. And I was like, okay, what? And then I was like, and then why are we like, okay, great, she got out of jail. Like, that's wonderful. Like, she survived jail. That's awesome. But we don't need to be, I mean, first of all, we know how people who rise to fame very quickly, it often becomes incredibly toxic for them. And it's just not great in general. Like, there's never been someone that I know of who like rose to fame super quickly from something crazy they did, and they've like, it's been good for them. Like, it's bad for their mental health. It's bad for our mental health. It's just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't find any reason to follow her, really.
Yeah, that's such a good point. People, you're right. When people rise to fame so quickly, it's almost never good. And one thing that I have seen and I've learned, and I think John Mulaney said this in one of his specials, like likability is a prison. So like the higher you go up, the further you can fall down. I mean, she says, someone finds her tweets and like all of her fame and her old tweets, all of her fame and fortune is gone. So I just don't think we should be. I think like she wants to be an advocate, and she for people who have mental health. I think that's such a good idea, because I'm also thinking like, what else can she do to make money? I think she can be an advocate. She can write a book. She can do a movie. I think that's a really good thing. But like,
well, also like you just got out of jail. Like, maybe get some mental help first.
Right.
Like, maybe spend a year getting some mental health, like minimum, right? And then take steps. Don't immediately like, and it's like, society's not helping, right? She creates an Instagram, she creates all this stuff, people immediately follow her and idolize her. That doesn't help her. Every human has a natural tendency to pride, right? She's like, oh my gosh, I'm this famous person now. It's just it shows it's telling of our society that this is who we want as an influencer. You know? Like, what?
Yeah. It's not looking good. So you guys let us know. Do you think that Gypsy being an influencer is no big deal? You think it's like, oh yeah, fun. I think it's funny. Or are you like, no, this feels a little dangerous? Because I mean, and another thing I just thought of, there's influencers who get people coming to their house. Like, are people acting like that toward her? Have they found her
Yeah.
address?
Oh, for sure.
Like, it can be kind of dangerous to be a very popular and famous influencer.
Yes.
I just don't see this as a good. It just doesn't. I don't see the good in this, I guess you could say. I mean,
I would agree with you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we technically have 2 more stories, but we're almost at an hour. So I think we can talk about the last one, and then call it a day.
Sounds
and we
good
don't
to
have
me.
to talk too much about it. It's more just like notifying you guys, and then maybe we can even come up with ideas of like what we can do to counteract this. This was actually from whitehouse.gov. The vice president will kick off her nationwide tour to fight against extremist attacks with an event in Wisconsin on January 22nd, the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Vice President Kamala Harris will embark on a nationwide Reproductive Freedoms tour to continue fighting against extreme attacks throughout America. She will hit the road to states across the country in early 2024 as she holds a series of events that bring together thousands of people to fight for the freedom of every American to make decisions with their own body. The tour will kick off in Wisconsin. Quote, extremists across our country continue to wage a full-on attack against hard-won, hard-fought freedoms as they push their radical policies. I will continue to fight for our fundamental freedoms, end quote. During the Vice President's Reproductive Freedom Tour, she will host events that highlight the harm caused by these abortion bans while sharing stories of those who have been impacted. Vice President Harris will also hold extremists accountable for proposing a national abortion ban, call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe, and outline steps the administration is taking to protect access to health care. Additionally, she will urge attendees to use their voice and stay engaged in the fight for fundamental freedoms. So,
can I go first real quick?
Yeah.
So here's my one thought when I first read this. She is scared of us. She is scared of the pro-life generation. Think about this. She's starting in Wisconsin. Why is she starting in Wisconsin? January 22nd, that's the weekend of the March for Life. That's when they typically have the Women's March that week. It's normally like the 20th, 21st, or 22nd, somewhere around there in DC. I haven't heard. I have looked and tried to figure out information about where the Women's March is. I think this is the substitute. Why the heck is she going to Wisconsin for this? It's because
very good point.
Everyone's in DC at the March for Life. Tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of pro-lifers are in DC, and they cannot handle us anymore. They have lost. Like, this is a win. I'm sorry. Okay, go on your freedom tour, whatever. I think we need to be there to combat it, right? When we can be. Obviously, we're not going to be in Wisconsin because this is when we're like in DC for the March for Life, a lot of us. But she's so scared of us. They're all so scared of us. Like, it's just every email that I get from the Women's March confirms it more and more. They're so afraid to announce. I'm surprised that they announced that they were doing it in Wisconsin, which is great. They're so afraid to announce where they're doing the events, when they're doing the events. I'm like, come on. We announced that we're doing a March for Life in DC every year, same day. Like, you guys come and protest. There's less protesters every year. Pro-life movement is doing amazing right now. Obviously, we have losses, but honestly, the people know that it has gone too far. I really think the people know that whether or not they think some abortion access is necessary, they know that the administration wants it to go too far. They know that. So it was just, I think that we should feel a little sense of victory here. Obviously, the fight is not over, but if Kamala really was, if she was really confident in what she was going to say, she'd do it in DC. She knows that's where everyone's going to be. That's where all the focus is going to be that weekend. Do it in DC. Why are you going to Wisconsin in the middle of nowhere to do it? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
That's such a good point. That was not my initial thought, but that's such a good point. They should be doing this in DC. And how powerful for them would it have been to do it the same weekend as the March for Life?
Well, that's why she's doing it. I'm pretty sure it's because it's the anniversary of Roe. Like, that's why she's doing it that weekend. But why are you going to Wisconsin? It's just, It doesn't make sense.
Right. I also think, I agree with what you said too. We should be countering it. So whenever you see that it's in your town, I think getting a group of people.
Oh, for
Students
sure.
for Life does stuff.
100%.
Live Action does stuff. Your Right to Life group will probably do stuff. Is countering it, because I do think one thing, we say this all the time. we got to continue to tell our stories. I think live action, once again, does a really good job of telling stories, because she's going to be telling stories. I think we should just try to, especially when it's going to be in your town, I think that's when your pregnancy center should be up and running and ready. Like, we should be ready for this, because the fact of the matter is, like, it's going to be, it's just the same people who agree with her, who love her, are going to be there. But there will be people who have not heard her side. So we need to make sure that we're saying what we believe as well. And we need to make sure that we're speaking truths and with grace and in love. I do think the people that are going to be into this type of stuff are people who are already hurting. So we need to be speaking the truth no matter what, in grace and in love. So I guess kind of want to just notify you guys, look out for where it is. When we find out where places are, I'll definitely share them on the Those Are the Girls podcast page, on Instagram and everything. And if you're, typically I do stuff in North and South Carolina, so if and when she comes to North and South Carolina, I will let everyone know, and hopefully I'll be at the events too. Hopefully she'll do it on the weekend. Sometimes they do stuff in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, and it's like, hello, we have jobs. Like, why are you doing this?
And we see it every year more and more at the Women's March.
Yeah.
They're afraid. They're afraid to talk to us. They have their spokespeople who are the only people who can talk to us, and then they send out emails about how important communication is. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure you're the same people who are telling me that, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm here to support women. I'm like, no, explain to me exactly what you're supporting, right? We have clear messaging. We have clear beliefs. We're backed by science, guys. There's no movement that I'm more confident to be a part of than the pro-life movement.
Amen.
And we just need to show up, and like literally that's all you need to do is show up. And I will definitely be there in Florida. We'll probably travel for some of them. It's just hard when they don't really this Wisconsin one was communicated. I hope that the rest of them will be communicated where they are, because sometimes they do it in secret.
That's such a good point too. They do a lot of things in secret. I think, like you said, because they are scared of us. And I do think, like, because we have everything is on our side, philosophy, the Bible, science, all that stuff is on our side. I think we have the most, we have the best messaging. We just have to get it out. That is our biggest problem, is we have to get it out. I'll never forget.
Agreed.
One of my friends, this was maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. He pro-life his pretty much his whole life. He said he had never even heard of pregnancy centers, so he started following me on Instagram. And I was like, that is not good.
And it's terrible. It's so sad because they have the mass media on their side. And we do a lot with what we can, but we just need to do more.
We have to.
Every single person needs to do more, because every single person has a different audience. It doesn't matter how big or small your audience is. Every single person has a bit of a different demographic and a different audience.
100%. The people that I reach might not reach. Allie Stuckey might not be able to reach them. The people that Christina Bennett reaches are going to be different than Kristen Hawkins. Like, there's just a different. We all are going to be reaching different types of people, and as long as we're all, speaking the truth, we're getting the information out. That is how we're going to change the culture, and we can. While we're changing the culture, we're also, changing laws and stuff like that. But when we change the culture, that's when we're going to see the biggest shift, and we're going to see less babies being murdered if we can change that culture. So yeah, you guys, that was
so true.
That was more of just like an update, and this is the show. I hope you enjoyed it. We talked about a variety of things. A lot about relationships, but that's the topic of everybody's mind. We all, I don't know, and we're girls. Like, that's just what we talk about. And we also talked about Gypsy Rose. Let us know what's your thoughts on that. Let us know your ins and outs. And then if there's something that you found interesting about the Epstein list, let me know. Like I said, Naomi Campbell being on there was shocking to me. And Stephen Hawking's honestly was shocking. A little snippet, that was different. Was not expecting that at all. So yeah, if you enjoyed the show, Savannah, how can people follow you? You also have a podcast.
They
Talk
can
about that
follow
real
me.
quick.
So my podcast has been on a bit of a hiatus since like October because of everything, but it's coming back in the new year. So it's called Classy Chicks Podcast. Feel free to call in, message us on Instagram. It's just Classy Chicks Podcast on Instagram. Or it's Classy Chicks Pod on Instagram. And then my personal social media is at sav.speakslife. Feel free to message me, contact me through there. Yeah. Love to hear from you guys.
Yeah. So make sure you guys follow and make sure you subscribe to her podcast. And also go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. Rate, review, subscribe, all of the things. We're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Please, please, please. We're back to like having a majority male audience. I don't understand how that happens. We're back to having a majority male audience on YouTube. Please, women, just like follow and
funny.
like watch. So yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. Leave 5-star review. I would really, really appreciate that. It helps with the algorithm too. If you leave a 5-star review, it'll help more other girls join our movement and like people will find the podcast. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that's it. So have a great day, night, evening, however, wherever you're listening. Bye.
Bye.